Ladies and gentlemen of the crypto space, we're live on a Thursday, September 8th at 11:59 a.m. Now, clearly this is going to sound redundant for participants on the most previous version of the stream, but it is what it is. Everything completely froze and nothing was responding. So we must reboot because we must proceed. This topic is of the utmost importance. People need certainty. People need rationality. People need rules for engaging in markets and making choices that that under conditions where they're not overwhelmed with emotions. Now, you're going to have the emotions, they're going to drive you nuts, but what I always talk about is a capacity to have rules such that the emotions are really irrelevant. You got to follow the rules. If you follow the rules, you're going to head in the right direction. So, Ethereum Merge is coming next week, macro, and what the heck is money? I don't know if we're going to get too philosophical, but in the end, what I want to talk about is the change in the monetary policy. I want to talk about the history of Ethereum, the last market compared to this market, and obviously we'll fold that into overall how we engage with the market from a portfolio perspective. Turn down my fan. Let's pop it over to the main screen. Here we go. So the history of Ethereum was that it was completely different. This market right now has nothing to do with the previous market. They are completely different territory. There was nothing in the last market whatsoever. It was literally capital raise after capital raise, ICO after ICO. There was nothing. So what happens when you have a bust? What happens when the contagion hits and the depreciation starts to set in? People start to sell. Because why hold an asset if it's going down in value? Why hold an asset and sell it for whatever, USD on a centralized exchange and keep it in a market that's depreciating? No, there was capital flight. The capital left the crypto space. So what counts was, in the last cycle, there was zero stickiness. There was zero reason for capital to stay in the crypto space. But look at what you guys have been doing for how long? Ethereum USD for, check this out. Check out the S&P. This is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, it's December 2021, and the entirety of 2022 has been a depreciative pressure on all risk assets. And that means all the capital that remains in the crypto space is sticky. That is different than the last cycle. That is different than 18 and 19, where capital just kept bleeding out over and over. And why is the capital sticky? Because it is different, because of the banking infrastructure, because of the forex markets, because of the market making opportunities. Billions upon billions of dollars are sticky in DeFi. And to me, that is absolutely extraordinary. And what is required for the capital to remain in the space? A network and a currency to pay for the transaction fees to operate on the network. So the monetary policy of Ethereum is going to have a significant impact on the behavior of actors in these markets. So we're approaching the Ethereum Merge, where there's going to be a 90% reduction in deficit spending, because that's a way to describe what is occurring with the Ethereum monetary policy in terms of traditional finance. They are creating capital out of nothingness. They're printing it, and they're using it to incentivize the securing of the network as per historic proof of work. And it's changing the proof of stake with a 90% reduction in emissions. And we're not going to get into a proof of work versus proof of stake conversation. But what is a 90% reduction in emissions? It's equivalent to the United States having, however, $4-5 trillion a year in deficit spending, and reducing it to $700 billion in deficit spending. That's going to be significantly affecting the behavior of everyone within markets that touch the United States currency. And that's exactly what's going to happen with Ethereum. There's going to be a scarcity of Ethereum, which is technically going to, you can look at this completely through the lens of foreign fiat as compared to the US dollar and what happens when the Fed raises interest rates. Now, it's not the same because everyone else has printers, and you have forex markets, and you have relative degrees of inflation, and you have all that nuance of the discussions we had about macro. But what happens when there's a constant supply, there's a constant demand for Ethereum to pay for transaction fees, combined with speculation, of course, and that's the froth. Speculation is pure froth. But at the base of Ethereum is the demand for it to actually transact. Every once in a while, I don't have an Ethereum position, but I buy it because I need it to pay for gas. And that's the same for everyone who engages in this space. So that constant demand faced with a now significantly reduced supply is going to be price appreciative almost under all rational ways of thinking about what's going to play out next week. Period. It's as simple as that. It could be hyper appreciative. And what does that mean? That probably means a couple different things to different people. That may mean, oh, I want an Ethereum position because I want it to significantly appreciate and capitalize dollar denominated. This really depends on how you manage the portfolio. It could mean it's significant from an ecosystem standpoint, and you're excited for the switch to proof of stake, where there's no real hardware requirement in order to secure the network. You just need a quantity of Ethereum along with a relatively simple software setup. So that means there's much more access to participating in the security of the network. You don't need to deploy a large mining implementation. So for a sovereign nation to get involved, they don't need to find semiconductor manufacturers in a time of extreme semiconductor manufacturing shortage. All they need is capital, which they could print because sovereign nations can print their currency, and they need relatively standard hardware, and that's it. And then they could participate and really significantly contribute to the security of the network, such that a nation state now can have, they could purchase 48% security or critical security, and they could start getting competitive with other nation states to ensure the security of the network, and then they could start to consume the network for national purposes. This is a very legitimate train of thought. You can't, a nation state cannot use any of these networks unless they themselves can ensure the security. So if they did such a thing, they would be actively engaging on-chain data to see who's securing the network, at what scale, at what size, and they'll have to be competitive. It'll be competitive to secure the network if nation states get involved in securing the network. They'll want not a source of truth, but they'll want a trusted party, a trusted authority securing the network. So obviously, if Europe's securing the network and Europe trusts the U.S., and then the U.S. is securing the network, Europe doesn't have to dominate the U.S.'s position because there's trust there. But if other actors are securing the network that are not trusted, there'll be a competition in that regard between NATO, for what it's worth, versus others to have a controlling security of the network. So this is quite an interesting train of thought that could play out. You can't do that with proof of work. You can't even buy the damn semiconductors. So I'm quite excited for this change, and I don't have an Ethereum position. I believe many folks probably want it, and there's reasons to want a capital gains type of play, but that's not my rules. So everyone will have to follow their rules heading into next week, and my rules are that basically everything on the Ethereum network is a long on Ethereum itself. So you're basically exposed to Ethereum. If Ethereum succeeds, everything on the network succeeds. So I already have a 10x long on Ethereum vis-a-vis my curve position. And that's my rationale. And I don't want excess exposure to Ethereum. So by having Ethereum itself, I have excess exposure to it. What do I need? How much do I need of it? I need enough to engage in transaction fees, and that's the bottom line. So that's my rationale or my thought processes heading into next week. A 90% reduction in deficit spending is extraordinary. It's going to significantly disrupt the capital flows in the markets. And this market is so different than previous markets. This chart is extraordinary. These circles are extraordinary. As compared to Bitcoin, which I haven't looked at in this second stream, we looked at it briefly in the most previous one, is also extraordinary. This basically shows a narrative playing out for Ethereum, whereas, look at this. Let's circle it and I'll highlight. Like here. What the fuck is this? Now, this is just Ethereum outperforming for speculative purposes. There was nothing back then. There was no infrastructure. There was no capital stickiness. There was no reason to have Ethereum. All you could do with Ethereum is pay for gas fees to send Ethereum. You did nothing. So it's such an extraordinarily different market compared to this appreciative leg. Now, if we're looking for Ethereum to outperform Bitcoin, it would do it in this market for very different reasons as compared to the previous market. The previous market, it outperformed maybe just for speculative reasons. It was increasingly volatile. People were taking advantage of capital gains. Great groovy grand. But now, especially after the merge, it could continue to outperform merely because of supply and demand. The demand for a currency facing a supply collapse, and that currency is absolutely needed to make payment for transaction fees to operate on the network. So what's the demand for operating on the network? All the speculative behavior and all the activity that is going on that's triggering capital stickiness on the network. So there's constant demand. Demand's not going to change next week. Demand go down next week after the merge? No, the demand's going to be the same. If anything, it's increasing over time. Look what the hell's going on with GMX over in Arbitrum. That's extraordinary. You need Ethereum because you got to bridge it over to Arbitrum. I mean, clearly the transaction fees are relatively trivial over there, but Arbitrum ultimately bundles up the transactions and executes a mainnet transaction, which requires Ethereum to pay for the gas fees. So the core thesis is that there's a 90% reduction in emissions, and you still have the burn component, still have the IP 1559, which entails if network load increases, and it's 40%, 39 GUI right now for a transaction. So as you know, we remember from the cycle 2020, 2022, we were seeing 100 and very big spikes, 1,000 to 3,000 GUI. And there's big burn, so that's the deflationary component. Ultrasound money. We could see that an all-time time frame, 2.6% after for the currently reduces to minus 1.5% on average. Let's go to the monthly average. So clearly the last month transaction volume has been significantly down. But now, as of right now, over the last 30 days, on average, Ethereum would be at break even, no supply increase. That is an extraordinary disinflation. 4.1% inflation to 0.1% inflation. What? You can imagine the macro talk. We got, what, 8.5%, 9%, 10%, whatever the hell it is, and the Fed is freaking out, jacking up their Fed funds rate to get us down to 2%. What happens if instantaneously it went to 0.1% from 4.1%? I think there would be a scramble. The dollar would, well, that's another story. How this would translate to dollar capital flows. But this is basically a supply collapse. And to top it all off, if you go out to all time, it'll be one deflationary, less supply on a yearly basis, 1.5% decrease in available currency. So I like talking about Ethereum in terms of currency. Bear in mind it's only a currency in terms of paying for transaction fees. And Ethereum nodes are, be very clear about this, Ethereum nodes are a bond in terms of transaction fees, not dollar denominated. Ethereum is a currency producer, and when you have a node, you're buying a bond and you're getting paid by the currency producer. Now, it clearly gets more complicated when you talk about it in dollar denominated terms, but if you're only paying transaction fees, it's a risk-free position. Clearly, risk-free, the phrase bites people in the ass, but risk-free in terms of the network functioning, continuing to function, but you'll be getting a risk-free return on capital that can be used to pay for transaction fees, which is completely irrespective of the dollar denomination. The dollar is not related to that equation whatsoever. And I find that fascinating. Clearly, when you start talking dollar denominated, the entire conversation changes and you have to bring in all sorts of other topics. Let's answer some questions. I know I've tried to hit my topic. It was on my mind twice today, but hopefully the second time around helps a bit. And I'm hopefully be able to get some additional helpful points as I go through your questions. Dwinga, great topic, very interesting. My man, Zoidberg's in the house. Peter Krask, caught a Noah stream, a pleasure. I was planning on writing some code. Yeah, I got to get back to work myself. I just cranked out a build, but I gave it to the team, so they're good. They're reviewing the code changes. Long time, first time. Thank you for the voodoo that you do. Band Dog, my man, I appreciate it. It's not voodoo. My phrase is peer through the madness. The general public sees hopium. They see a chance for something better, but that's something better. That's a very vague phrase. What is better? Capacity to pay bills? Capacity to save? I don't think folks really dig into a rigorous definition of these phrases and concepts that they use very often. Like the government doesn't give them a chance, but they do, and that's entrepreneurship, and you could always break free. But you can't save, and but there's no real store of value. I don't believe in Bitcoin as a store of value. That makes absolutely no fucking sense because you can't go to a store and pay with it. Things in a store are not Bitcoin denominated, they're dollar denominated, so therefore dollar denominated, the last thing Bitcoin is a store of value. And speculating that in the future it'll be a store of value, that's irrelevant. It's not today. You play a market as it is today. Today is all that counts. You can prepare and speculate towards the future, and folks like Dan and everyone, they know what I say. 1% to 10% changes everything. Great. But you can't pay for a sandwich at Subway with speculation on the future. No, you got to sell it for dollars. You need to operate in a dollar framework as long as the dollar is standard. So I would argue the greatest store of value that is presented towards us is enterprise, which is very traditional. Real estate investing. You own 5 properties, you rent them out, you got cash flow. You own a business, you own a pizza shop. Oh shit! You own a pizza shop, you selling pizza, you got cash flow. You own 10 pizza shops, you got more cash flow. I don't know, for the big boys, you own a bank, you own a manufacturing plant, you got a business, you got an enterprise. You own a casino. You got cash flow that's playing on hopes and dreams. And what do we got in this society is shitload of hopes and dreams. So, oh wow, the crypto space is filled with casinos. Own a casino. Get the transaction fees. That's cash flow. That's an enterprise. You own a business. You're a business owner. Very, very true statements. Um, anyway, so I digress. I digress into stuff that sustains me in these markets because the fact that I own a business is completely irrelevant from the business's valuation. I know my valuations are down, but are the businesses functioning? Check. Is it positive cash flow? Check. Are these good investments from a P&E standpoint, from the business balance sheet? Are these businesses healthy? Do they have a potential to go insolvent? Do they have excess debt load? No. These businesses have no debt, at least the ones that we look at in the forum. There's no debt, cash flow positive, sticky capital, deposits, volume, activity, to such a degree that they're paying out cash flow to people that own it. That's a damn store of value. That's a bet on the future because it's a store of value, but it's also speculative, and it's very consistent with traditional financial management. Just be a business owner. Great, check. Buy a crypto asset, you're a business owner. So that's peering through the madness. So the general public sees the insanity of Dogecoin, and they express their hopes and dreams that $100 will turn into $1 million. But that's a lottery ticket. I don't want to play the lottery. I don't want to play the lottery. I want a rigorous, methodical way to engage with a market that is completely misused and abused and misinterpreted for what it is. And there's your asymmetry. There's your reflexivity. There's your misvaluation. People looking at even just GMX, like the token, speculative price action. No, that shit pays cash flow. How much cash flow? Oh, the volume on the network is extraordinary. You just got to get it at a discount. Don't buy things at a premium, which is extraordinary considering these market conditions that everything's really at a premium, especially GMX. Now, Ethereum's at a premium relative to its bottom. It has appreciated significantly. That's the Bitcoin chart. Nope, that's the dollar chart. Up 100% from its bottom. Now, the asymmetric potential is that it's mispriced. It's not at a discount. Now, it's hard to say you can only buy it at a discount. So a discount is clearly a subjective terminology. And it really means you want to get a cash flow productive asset as cheap as price possible. And what you're going to do is argue with yourself, is it going to go down? What are the odds the asset goes down to give you that additional discount so you can have a larger position? And that's going to be an endless fight with yourself to try and decide whether that's the case or not. But I would argue that Ethereum isn't the most productive asset. I don't think it's a great asset to own for speculative purposes. So it doesn't catch my fancy. Now, it'll catch the fancy of who? It'll catch the fancy of brokerage houses. It'll catch the fancy of, the BlackRocks, of the nation states. Why? Because they could buy bonds that produce risk-free capital to pay for the ultimate thing that can only be paid for with Ethereum. The damn transaction fee. You can't pay an Ethereum transaction fee with a dollar bill. You can't pay an Ethereum transaction fee with anything other than Ethereum. That's crazy. It's a damn currency in that regard. I digress. Tapsy's in the house. Yes, indeed. Groundhog Day. It's a new day every day. Same, whatever the phrase was. Instead of having a BTC and Ethereum position, I'm opting for GLP, less upside potential, but feel more productive. Well, GLP is you're providing working capital to a very successful business operation. And that working capital you are being paid for. You're exchanging volatility for a return for renting your capital to them. And there's your risk reward calculation. GLP is actually quite an extraordinary position compared to like an AMM and providing liquidity. LP positions are much more so like option strategies. And you're going to get all these sophisticated derivative products, and there's so many folks working on them, all these perps and all these fancy, like delta neutral stuff and fancy derivatives. It's cool though. I think GLP is actually really, really cool. And if it's enough bang for the buck, great. I mean, it's not like Curve and the other stuff that we love is paying much more than GLP. GLP is paying 30% on Arbitrum. So, very good point, Dan. Very good point. P's in the house, a pleasure. I know your mom's sick. Listen, I will check and I don't want to. I've talked about this before. It's not really the place for it, but my mom passed. My mom died of emphysema. She wasn't in the hospital. Medication did nothing for her. She had an oxygen machine. It did nothing. She might as well not have had it. It didn't do anything. She suffered in the end, and there was nothing that could be done. And the best thing I did for my mom was to not put her in a hospital. So, and no medication will help. No medication will help with it. There's nothing that'll fix it. Pneumonia, she may pass, my friend. And I say that, obviously it sounds a little cold, but that's just because I've been through it. And I know how devastating it is, my friend. I know, I understand, and there's tragedies every day. Just be with her. Be with her. Hold her hand, help her with food, tell her stories, and that is the best you can do. And in hindsight, I'm thankful because that's what I did with my mom. I didn't struggle to try and be like, "Oh, mom, don't pass." And, I knew it was going to happen. I was prepared the whole time, and it was emotionally devastating. But I was there with her, talking to her, and in hindsight, I did the best possible and I did the right things. So I know you may be significantly younger than myself, and I know how emotional it gets, but try to listen to my experience with literally the same experience that you're going to have. Nobody lives forever, and that's I digress, everybody. I'm very sorry. I digress a little bit because I experienced this. Maybe not the psychosis part, but definitely the degenerative lung disease to the point where she died basically of suffocation, and it's going to be very painful and disturbing, and it'll last you the rest of your life. And hopefully what it'll give you is motivation, because that's what it gave me to do what I do. We do what we do for our parents, to such that if they're looking down from above, we impress them. Holy shit, the kid did it. That's what I say all the time to myself. I say, like, my father's looking down. He's gone as well. He's looking down. Holy shit, that kid did it. Because that's what I would say for my kids. Like, holy shit, the kid did it. Holy crap. He pulled it off. The kid's smart. So I'll do that, my friend. Samuel, after buying discounted cash flow, unloading some portion once it has multiples makes sense. Well, bear in mind, if you bought discounted cash flow and you're unloading multiples, that's a speculative component. Well, yeah, if you're going to make 100, 2, 3, 4, 500, or whatever the hell percent gains, that's a capital gains. Take your capital gains. That's how you grow a portfolio. 1% to 10% changes everything. But it's quite extraordinary where you get capital gains on a cash flow asset. But yes, you take your gains, because something that goes up 500% is not going to necessarily stay up 500%. Something that rips 100% on a breakout is going to retrace and come back down, and then maybe there's a new discount available. So that is a hard calculation, how to distinguish between a capital gains opportunity and a cash flow position. But in the end, the game is to accumulate cash flow. So if you have a capital gains opportunity, that facilitates your ultimate goal to accumulate cash flow. Yes, it does make sense, Samuel. Tap C freed up some cash to create optionality. Feels weird to sit on cash, but also feels good. We're learning. I thank you very much, my friend. I'm sitting on cash. I wish that I was sitting on more cash. I often think of November 2021 and how much cash I could be sitting on, but that is okay. That's irrelevant. You cannot dwell on what has occurred. You can only do better. And to do better, you need to survive. Therefore, we must focus on our rules. Under all conditions, you have to have cash. Why? Because of optionality. You can't make a choice unless you have optionality. So even under the most bullish conditions, you need optionality. You'll never catch a top, and we can only hope to catch bottoms. In the end, the rule is you want to buy cash flow at a discount. If there's capital gains on the table, you take it. It's not personal, it's business. You take it, and you take it quick. And if there's nothing to buy at a discount to produce you additional cash flow, you have your optionality and you have your cash. And that's how you do that. I was thinking about your theory. The premium is from the bottom during price depreciation cycle. Therefore, the discount is from the top. Yeah, so the reason I often say it's not at a discount, like look at Ethereum dollar denominator, it's not at a discount relative to the bottom. 866, it's 100% up. And then you got newbies that'll come around and say, oh, look, it's at a discount. It was at $5,000. Because that is what everyone thinks, and that'll buck you in the ass. That'll bite you in the butt. Because the last thing you want to do is think the way everyone thinks. You need to be contrarian. You need to buck the status quo. You need to think different. So if everyone thinks, holy shit, 1,600 compared to $5,000, that's a discount. All right, fine. No, I'm going to measure from the bottom. And it's 100% up. And what if there's a 50% retrace? Because if there's a 50% retrace, listen, if you get to 1,000, 1,100, you're above the TWAP on the monthly. The chart looks good, and you just got a discount, but you can't buy that without optionality. If you buy the whole stack at 1,600, you don't have a choice. You can't make a decision. You have removed a freedom of choice. Keep your freedom to choose. Jesse, Steven, great to see you back. Stay rational always. Vaku's in the house. Hi, Captain. Hi, everyone. Pneumonia fibrosis is concerned. There's a new effective treatment. Yeah, it's not so easy in plenty of parts of the world. India, Africa. These medications don't exist, and it's a complex topic because I've been helping out with charity as best I can. It's devastating, guys. 20,000 kids a day die in Africa of just no food. And it's not even sickness, it's just they don't have food. They die of starvation. What's the most common cause of death in Africa? The last I checked, it's pretty much diarrhea. So they don't even, in most countries, you have some bread and take some probiotics and you're good in 3 days. It's a very complicated world out there. So I love the macro. I love to understand the big picture. But you can't always focus on the big picture. You have to focus a little micro to understand, or at least to engage with markets, because if you go too big, too broad, it's overwhelming, and it won't get you anywhere. So what's most important, the way we talk, is we're looking at this microcosm of global financials. We're looking at Ethereum dollar denominated. That's what's important. What's going on with Curve? What's going on with, we could talk even equities. So where does macro fit into that? It's the context. It gives you the backdrop. It gives you the big picture. So it's imperative to understand macro, but that doesn't play into the way you engage with micro aspects of the system. It just gives you additional reference material, additional context to make better, more more thought out, well thought out decisions. Brian, good morning. I'll check my email, my friend. I've said what I could possibly say thus far. I wish the best. All right, that's what I wanted to talk about. So just be smart heading into the merge. We could have volatility, we could have uncertainty. So the appropriate thing to do is to keep optionality, so you can make choices. You can't make choices if you don't have cash. Make sure you have enough to cover your bills, and those types of conversations we've had. But the rules stay the same. The positions in my portfolio are set. I'm not really making any decisions heading or in the short term. I don't have enough capital to take on a real position size that I'd like. I'm not taking on the amount of capital that I have. I can take on one or two positions, but they'd be the smaller end of the portfolio. So, like I can't take a position in GMX that I would like. So I can't take the position. And does it frustrate me? Sure, but am I going to break the rules? No. There's other assets of other market cap size that could very much fit into my current liquidity. And I could take out and carve out one or two positions. But there's nothing that I see at a discount. Look at Manifold. Look at that thing ripping. But there's less than 1% liquidity on the market. So you got less than 1% of the liquidity on the market, defining a market cap FDV that's very large market cap. So less than 1% liquidity is not really a great representation of the price point in the market cap that it would be if there was a significantly greater amount of liquidity available. And it's just a lot. And frankly, we talk about it on the forum, the most rational place in the crypto space. And you guys know the assets. I just, if there was an opportunity, we'll be talking about it, and we'll discuss it, and we'll talk about rational position sizes relative to the portfolio. And it may be the case that it is not rational to take a position at all, even though you may want a position. Because you have to respect the portfolio. If you don't respect the portfolio won't respect you. And therefore, the portfolio won't respect the needs of you and your family, your monthly debt obligations, and your bills. So you have to be respectful, which ultimately means quite often we can't take positions. If discounts occur, what are you buying? All right. I'll talk for 5 seconds. 5 seconds. That's it. I love the Aura Balancer Federation. It's the closest thing we've had to the Curve Federation thus far. What is disappointing is VE BAL is not what I would like it to be. Now, you can't say they're off to a not rocky start, but then you could say Curve's deployment was a complete disaster for the first year. So it's hard to get out of a speculative way of looking at it, because you have to speculate only that it will stabilize and things will get better. And the amount of capital that I have, I can't necessarily do that in the position size I would want. Balancer's a beast. It's large. It's one of the larger AMMs. And so I took the small position in Aura. I took the small spec play, and that worked out very well. It was a 5-6x give or take, but it's very productive. So I'm quite satisfied with that. So I have to be satisfied. One of the hardest things to do is to be satisfied by not making a shitload of money. You have to be appreciative of what has been achieved, and that it doesn't have to be a giant number. And that's that. So Aura BAL's hot. I don't really see needing to carve out a position, albeit if there's a catastrophe in the markets, maybe a VE BAL. Frax, I already have Frax. I've had a Frax position since it was $4, a year and a half ago when it launched. So curve, no. I have maxed out my curve position. I did take a 12% bump in the curve position. Let's look at the curve chart. I grabbed the curve position at like a buck 14, 12% bump. Just yesterday, just before this gnarly wick down to a buck 01, so I could have saved a fair amount of capital, but that's okay. Um, it was a good choice, and that's my core cash flow position. It's the core business. This business is so grossly mispriced, and that doesn't mean $100 a CRV. That means $2, $3, $4, $5 a curve, back to where it was maybe. But the volume on the network and the cash flow. That's what's most interesting. Now, look, it's a completely different market as compared to GMX, but GMX has very meaningful cash flow. So there's no reason someone like me that's rational, but they opt for GMX to be the core of their portfolio, and they got in at $5, and they got a discount on the cash flow, and maybe they were in early. So, but that there's no reason that my portfolio structure is needed to achieve the things that I talk about. It's conceptual what matters. Um, so it's not the structure, it's how the structure was attained that matters most. It's the rules of the road. Um, that's about it, Manny. That's about it. We'll see how the market goes, but mostly nowadays it's quite passive. I'm still probably leaning towards liquidating convex. October 19th, my position's up. It's not a large position. You know, you wouldn't even see it on the damn chart here. But it's nice to see it above the TWAB. It'll be nice to see it stabilize. Be nice to see some appreciation. But I have overexposure to the curve narrative. That's something I've talked about much over the past couple of years. I do not need additional exposure to it. I'll be giving up cash flow for optionality merely because I have overexposure to the Curve Federation, and that's okay. I mean, frankly, even Frax is overexposure to the Curve Federation, but frankly, Frax in itself is an entire separate narrative also, which really can mature speculatively into the Frax Federation. Fortunately, they offer VE, so I don't have a choice whether I am going to see what happens. I couldn't sell it if I wanted to. So I very much appreciate that reality for voter escrow. Um, it's a forced strong hand. So that's cool. Crypto Jake, a pleasure. Tapsy, a pleasure. Let's wrap it up. Thursday, September 8th, 12:42 p.m. You know the deal. Tell everyone to subscribe. I can only help someone if they hear the words of wisdom. I wish you all a good one. After party on Discord for the most rational community in the entire crypto space. It is a wonderful place. The odds are I'll probably crank out a stream tomorrow. I haven't had any other stream this week, but hopefully I'll think of something interesting to talk about tomorrow. You all have a good one. I will see you then. Peace.